Hi, John Morgan here with Bob's Market and Greenhouses, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our weekly show right here on the internet. And well, this week I have kind of an interesting video because we're going to be gardening with kitchen scraps. You might be saying, kitchen scraps? What? Okay, you're making compost. That's a common thing to do with kitchen scraps. But no, we're actually going to be gardening with kitchen scraps. In other words, planting them and getting new plants. So there's a ton of produce that you buy that you can actually take cuttings from or different things like that and grow new plants from them. So that's what we're going to be doing in this week's episode of Bob's Live. So a few weeks ago, I was making a recipe, and it called for Swiss chard, but I didn't have any Swiss chard handy because I couldn't find any in the produce department at the store. But they did have bok choy, which is a pretty good substitute. And of course, I got the bunch of bok choy home, chopped it off, chopped the base off of it, and cooked with it, and the meal turned out delicious. But I had this little base left over. And I thought, you know what? It works for celery. I'll stick it in some water and see if I can grow roots on it. And sure enough, this is after about 1 week of growth. This would have been about 4 weeks ago, I think. It started to really kind of sprout out and grow roots on it. So last week, it had enough roots on it that I thought it was a good time to transplant it. So that's what I did. So let's take a look at exactly how I transplanted this and how you can sort of apply this in your own kitchen. So, well, let's take a look at the video, and while it's playing, if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the comments, and I'll take a look and we'll address those questions or comments on the other side of the video. So here we go. This is planting kitchen scraps. Okay, this evening we're here at my house for a little potting project. And what we're going to be potting is bok choy. And this little guy I actually got as a cutting from the base of the bok choy that I just bought at the grocery store. So things like bok choy and celery, whenever you cut off that base, you can save it and put it in water like this and get roots to grow on it. So I cooked with where this cutting came from. I cooked with it about 3 weeks ago. Since then, it's been rooting in water, and it's got a pretty good set of roots on it, and it is ready to be transplanted. And in keeping with the kitchen scrap theme, I have this empty yogurt container that I'm going to be transplanting it into. And all I need to do is make a drainage hole in the bottom, the little lid for the container. That's going to be my tray. And that's all there is to it. So, I've got a pair of scissors there, but I think a pocket knife will work a little bit better. Let's go ahead and make us a drain hole in the bottom. And I'm just sort of doing that. There we go. That's our drain hole. And what I like to do to keep my potting mix in the container is I always put in some paper towels in the bottom. And that just acts as a filter. So let me stuff that in. Got a little bit of water here. That'll moisten that up. And got a Ziploc baggie full of potting mix. And this is where it gets messy. So this bok choy, when I originally used it, I was making a recipe called Eggs in Purgatory. And the recipe itself used the stems of, well, it actually called for Swiss chard in the recipe. But the store didn't have Swiss chard available. But they did have bok choy, and it works as a pretty good substitute. But the Eggs in Purgatory recipe itself calls for the stems of Swiss chard, which is normally something that you kind of strip away from Swiss chard when you're using it. But it used the stems, and then you made a salad from the leaves. So bok choy was a perfect substitute for that. Okay, I've got the container here about halfway full, and I'm not going to fill it all the way to the top because I kind of want to leave room, you know, to water in around the edges. So let me go ahead and take this. The roots were kind of starting to circle a little bit, so let me spread out the roots there a little bit. And we'll get it seeded down in. And I think that's going to work good. That'll kind of keep it growing upward. So I've started celery like this all the time. And this was the first time I'd kind of experimented with something other than celery. And I was surprised at how well it took off. In fact, I think it actually started rooting better than celery. But I keep celery growing in my windowsill all the time. And of course the stems don't get as big as celery would outdoors. But for using in something like spaghetti sauce or chili or a recipe like that, it works great. Now once I get this in and watered, I want to keep it pretty moist for the first few days, but it's kind of a balancing act, because if I get it too moist, that kind of clump of residual stems, it might rot and kill the plant. So it's kind of a fine balancing act, and sometimes you have luck using this method and sometimes you don't. But it is worth a try. It's a fun thing to do. And you get a new plant out of one that you've already paid for. So there's really nothing to lose with it. Okay, I don't want to waste the water that I had it rooting in, so I'm going to go ahead and use that to water it. And of course, where this is fresh potting mix, that's going to need a little bit more water. there we have it. So we've recycled this container that otherwise would have ended up in a landfill. And we're also reusing what would have been kitchen scraps and could have been composted. So go ahead, give this a try, experiment. It's really a lot of fun to try. So there we have it. It's as easy as that to basically take a kitchen scrap that would end up in your compost bin and get another plant out of it that you can use and enjoy in your kitchen. So I do this with, well, I guess now bok choy, but I've done it with celery for a long time. I always have celery growing in my kitchen window. And I'll create a start like that and then plant it. And it'll usually grow for a couple years. I'll trim one or two pieces off of it at a time to use. And, you know, it's great to add to soups and sauces and different things like that. Or just for, you know, quick little snack in the kitchen. But, you know, every now and then I'll switch them out. So I have a stalk of celery growing right now, and it's starting to get kind of old. It's been there for about a year. It's getting kind of pithy in some of the stalks. So I'm probably going to take a new start of celery and start a new pot here pretty soon. So I constantly do that, both with things like celery and then also the herbs that I grow from seed in my kitchen. So I always have in my kitchen window. The two main things that I always have is basil and then also rosemary. And I also like to grow oregano. So those three herbs are perfect for the kitchen. I use those constantly. And, well, that is kind of a start on kitchen gardening. I'm sure we're going to circle back around to that later on. And you're definitely going to see more yogurt containers. Those things are awesome to plant in. So when I start my seeds for this spring for the garden, I'm going to be using a ton of those. I recently switched brands of yogurt that I buy, and those are perfect containers. Well, the only other thing that I have this week is just a reminder that the Spring Color Tour is coming up. I find my note here. It's coming up April 18th. That's on a Saturday, and it's at 2 p.m. So right now you can head over to our website at bobsmarket.com, and right at the top of the home page we have a button that you can click on, and that'll take you to the page for the Spring Color Tour. And if you're planning on coming, there's a registration button there, and I want you to register. Just put your name and how many you expect to have in your party. So what that helps us do is that kind of helps us plan, for one thing, how many snacks and different things like that we need to buy, and also how many chairs we need to put out when we're preparing. So that kind of helps give us a general idea for the tour. And well, that's all that I have for this week. So until next time, keep growing. You're still watching? I'm done. Well, since you're still here, head over to bobsmarket.com and check out our website. We've got some really cool stuff over there, like the Keep Growing podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, smash that notification bell, and all that stuff. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.